so if it's real or fake. Golden Greek told us the giant goon Dickov, El Toro, the Grunt Brothers too. The wild Samoans got something crazy going. They're gonna be going after you. Wrestling tonight. Everything is bigger than life.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Wrestling Tonight. I am your host, Mad Dog Butch. Joining me, as always, my co-host, my longtime co-host, Brace Beemer.
Yeah.
I had one, but I forgot it.
But that was still an excellent introduction. I like it.
Thank you.
All right.
And joining us tonight, our special guest from the television show Comics, Beer, and Sci-Fi, none other than Richie Rollins himself.
Nice.
Yes.
Welcome,
Hi.
Rich.
Hi. How you guys doing?
Fantastic.
All right.
When's that show, Aaron?
Oh, right now we're in hiatus. We don't know when season 4 will start up again. If it'll be the fall or winter.
Okay.
Are they still showing the reruns on TV right now, or no?
They might be if you have Comcast. Sometimes they'll flop it up there.
On
okay.
CN 900.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Oh,
2 o'clock in the morning. All righty.
Yeah.
That seems like that was a short season. Am I wrong?
Yeah. It wasn't a full season. It was 8. We did 8 weeks, and then we took a few weeks off, and then we did the last 4 shows.
Oh, okay.
Well, nonetheless, everybody can get on their gimmick and see if they can find Comics, Beer, and
That's
Sci-Fi,
right.
or
Go right online.
or
If you
go on YouTube, and I'm sure you got
Google,
your shows archived.
Comics, Beer, Sci-Fi. You can see our full shows and full interviews and interviews that never made it to the
Yeah,
show.
you can see Mad Dog
Cool.
Butch on there too.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Dog made
that's
an appearance.
a couple seasons ago, but I was on there along with Richie
Yes.
and along with the Q.
Stole the title. Q and I are still coming after you.
I think you guys stole that back from me at the end of the one show. Anyway,
I got hit with the belt. I can't remember.
Richie, I don't know if you've had a chance to watch our show or listen to our show, but anytime we have a guest on here, we like to give them a gift. And since it is WrestleMania season, I got you a pack of 2019 Road to WrestleMania trading cards.
All right.
Now they don't have the gum anymore, but I think they put more cards in than they used to.
All right.
So there's like 20 cards in this thing, and it says there's some autograph cards and whatever.
Ooh,
But
I hope I got
anyway, thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thank you. Hope
Free
I
gimmicks. Free
get a
gimmicks.
Official Roman Reigns autograph card.
Did they used to put gum in the wrestling cards? I don't think I've ever bought any.
Back in the 80s, I'm sure they did.
Huh.
I'm
Because I
pretty
know
sure
they did on the
those,
top baseball cards, but they took them out because they're wrecking the cards.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Remember those the WWF cards they had in like the mid 80s?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they had gum in those.
Yeah, I
still.
probably got a pack of those.
But it wasn't too long after that where they stopped putting gum in.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Like you had the upper decks. All the nice cards came out for all the different
Right.
sports, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's another show.
Okay, so I asked both of you guys earlier to come up with a top 10 list originally of who you felt were the most overrated professional wrestlers of all time. But so I made my top 10 list, and then I was thinking that I was forgetting some guys, so I went to the internet to kind of see what people thought. And there's that website called Ranker. So they had like 50 wrestlers on there that, basically you can, I don't think they were necessarily wrestlers that were considered overrated, but it was on there, and then people can up, down them or vote or downvote them or whatever. So then I told you guys that we're just going to do this instead. I'm going to throw names out, and we are going to discuss on if we think that they are overrated or not. Or maybe you think they're underrated, and you can mention that. Or maybe you think that they're right where they should have been. So just to start off, the number one person that they felt voted on by the internet wrestling community, I'm assuming, was the number one overrated wrestler of all time, is none other than the Great Khali. Now, I don't think I would call him necessarily overrated. He was not the greatest wrestler, obviously, but he was not really meant to be either. I mean, he was what he was. He was just like a giant goon or like an attraction. Brace Beemer, what are your thoughts?
He shouldn't even be on an overrated list. I mean, that's like saying I'm getting a banana split with and I want chocolate, and then they give you like a taco. You know, so if he's number one on an overrated list, then fine. But I didn't think he was ever rated. I thought he was always just
I think
absolutely
probably
horrible. You know.
Yeah, I think the reason why is because he held the WWF title at least at one point. He might have held it more than once. I don't remember. But Richie, you have any thoughts on the great Khali?
Yeah, he definitely needed to develop a character better and have some skill in the ring. I mean, I felt like even though he was intimidating and probably could whip anybody's butt, I felt like I had a shot at him.
Well, yeah, I think if you like aimed for the knees, I think anybody would have had a good shot.
I think if you had a little skill and little knowledge of how to box, just a little bit, maybe one lesson, you could take him.
He wasn't the most fleet of foot, huh?
No.
No, he was unstable, I think would be an understatement. And it just got worse as he got older. I don't know. I never really watched any of his stuff in Japan. Maybe he was actually decent at one point in Japan. I don't know. But by the time he got here, I don't know if it was injuries or what, but yeah, it looked like he could barely stand up without wobbling around. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. Obviously, we're going to start with one of the biggest names in wrestling. A lot of people have considered this guy overrated over the years, and I think he might actually be number 2 on the ranker list. But that's none other than Hulk Hogan himself. Brace Beemer. Thoughts on whether Hulk Hogan is overrated or not?
Definitely not overrated. I assume that he's on the list because of his work rate or whatever, how many moves he can execute. Hulk Hogan is one of the greatest workers of all time. One of the best sellers that I've seen. I mean, if I had a top 20 seller list, for acting like you're really getting the crap kicked out of you and what your face looks like and everything, Hogan's on it. So I don't buy that. That's definitely an internet Dave Meltzer dirt sheet crowd.
Richie Rollins.
Well, let me tell you something, brother. I don't know who these people are that made this vote, but they should all go for drug testing. Because there's no way he's overrated at all. Without Hulk Hogan, we do not have the wrestling we have today. I mean, it'd be dead. I don't.
We'd still have it, but he was
the
biggest.
It would never be this big, or it wouldn't grow. It'd take a lot longer to grow. We probably wouldn't even have like.
That's a good
Stone
point.
Cold, The Rock, and a lot of guys.
I mean that's hard to say because let's say they would have put Superstar Billy Graham in Rocky instead of Hulk Hogan. And apparently what happened was. Well, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So let's say Vince brings him back. Well, actually, he probably wouldn't have lasted because he was already old. But let's just say he was healthy. I mean, it's possible that he could have spearheaded that only because of the exposure that he had in the Rocky III movie. I doubt it, but I mean, it is possible. I mean, we don't know, or maybe they would have put somebody else in that movie, another wrestler that WWF would have picked up and given that push to.
Well, Hulk should have got in trouble for doing that with Vince McMahon Sr. When he did Rocky III.
Well,
he wasn't working with him.
Yeah, he was never supposed to work with him again, but Vince Jr. said, hey.
Hogan, he didn't need Rocky III, really. It helped, and it helped the WWF's cause for going national that they had somebody that
it
was
started
in
putting him more in
Hollywood.
the mainstream then.
Because he was over before Rocky.
Yeah.
Before that movie, he was even he just had it. You hear somebody say in sports or anything.
Right.
He's got
That's
it.
true.
He had it. He was selling out. He's selling out there, hanging out of the rafters down south, And granted, smaller buildings and everything, but he just had that, whatever it is, that
he came to
charisma.
the Michigan State Fair. Remember, my dad tried to take me there, and you couldn't even get close to it. You couldn't even make it to the State Fair. There were so many people going.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
But I mean, Hulkamania actually started in the AWA. They had actually started that.
Sure.
and like you're saying, Hulk was already like super popular in there. You know, believe what you want to believe. You know, they poached him maybe because Vern would not put the title on Hulk. I mean that's kind of how the story goes, but who knows? But you know, if you would, and I was not a Hulk Hogan fan when I was a kid. I mean, I was at first, but it didn't last long. That I was always rooting for him to get beat, but that's basically because I liked the bad guys better.
Yeah, same here.
But no doubt about it, when Hulk Hogan was in the building, I mean, the crowd was insane. I mean, we were at WrestleMania 3. Were you at WrestleMania 3?
No, I couldn't make it to it.
And then there was like a house show at the Silverdome when he teamed with Bam Bam Bigelow. And I think that you said you saw a shoot interview with Bam Bam Bigelow where he actually mentioned that match, saying how crazy the crowd was.
Yeah.
But that was one of the loudest crowds that he was in.
DiBiase talks about that too.
Does he?
Yeah.
We almost got lynched because we were rooting for Andre.
I had the big Giant-O-Mania sign up.
Yeah, I swear to God. I mean, it wasn't. They didn't have the whole Silverdome.
It was half
open.
of
it.
It was the basketball court at half. Yeah.
But I swear to God, we were the only two people in there rooting for the bad guys, and people were like hot at us. But
I got the nod from Andre too.
Oh yeah, that's right.
The attaboy nod.
But yeah, if you would have asked me years ago, I might have said that Hogan's overrated, but I would not say that nowadays. I mean, you know, he's just an icon that transcended wrestling. One of the first guys to do that, at least, you know,
in modern era
for years. Yeah, in the modern era. So so I will say Hulk Hogan is not overrated. I think we all agree on that.
Yes.
So the rank little gimmick on the internet marks, they're kind of headed down the wrong path already. I love it.
Yeah.
I don't think they are on this one though, but we'll see. The guy that kind of was made to take Hogan's place is next. The man that beat Hulk Hogan clean after Hulk Hogan's 4 or 5 year title reign, and that is the Ultimate Warrior. You know, not to speak ill of the dead, but Brace Beemer, do you consider the Ultimate Warrior overrated?
Oh yes. I'll agree. I'll agree with the herd on this one. That's for sure.
Wait,
Ultimate.
let me say this: just because they're on this list doesn't necessarily mean that the internet community is saying they're overrated. I think they just threw names out there, and then you could vote up or down.
Oh, okay. So this. Oh, all right.
But Ultimate Warrior was up there, yes, as an overrated. Yeah.
I've never. I don't know. There hasn't been too many that I've seen that have been worse than Ultimate Warrior in the ring. Even, you know, he had the great gimmick, and people fell for the gimmick, especially, you know, depending on how young you were. But man, alive, that guy could. Every once in a while, he'd get in the ring with somebody that could have a good match that told a story, depending on whatever angle they had going on. But most of the time, he was horrible. He didn't look like he knew. Excuse me. Didn't look like he knew what he was doing, and he didn't. And he made everybody else around him look bad. So that's my view of the Ultimate Warrior.
Richie
drew some money though. You know, got to give him credit.
He did.
Hard worker at his whatever he was doing.
Yeah. Richie Rollins, what do you think about the Ultimate Warrior? Overrated or not?
The unicorns come from space and they head through the tunnel, and the universe told me I would be champion.
Yeah, pretty much.
Definitely overrated. I would not say that when I was younger, because I was one of those young people that loved the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
But thinking back on it, I do remember a few times going to get some popcorn as we're watching wrestling, and I hear the music, and then I hear the music again because the match was already over, because his matches couldn't last long because he was winded by the time he got to the ring. Gimmick was great. I love the nonsense talk. I almost understand it. It's so crazy. Probably if I was on drugs like he was, I probably would have understood it fully. But
it's like its own language.
Yeah. But definitely was an overrated wrestler. It is one of those characters that probably when he left, probably was the time that it leave, because it just wasn't gonna last. It was getting old quick.
Yeah, he's a flat. You're saying he's like a flash in the pan guy, and that
Yeah,
was
he'd
like
come
what
in-
all you could probably get out of it.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you know he wasn't in the ring. He was like you said, he wasn't very good. He was like everything was too telegraphed.
Yeah,
You could tell wrestling was not fake, but predetermined
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
stuff with him.
you didn't even have to be good in the ring, but you just didn't have to be as bad as he was.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you know, that was definitely a guy that, I mean, part of the reasons why he had such short matches was because they were trying to protect him because they knew that he was not that great in the ring himself.
That's true, too,
I do have to give credit to a guy that we're not going to mention otherwise, but a guy that got great matches out of him, and that was Rick Rude.
Yeah.
I was shocked
Oh.
at the.
Now you're
the
talking about
matches.
someone who's overrated, Rick Rude. I never liked Rick Rude.
Really?
I always thought he was overrated.
Really.
Yes.
No kidding.
Yes.
Really?
You know what? I was not
Well,
like
let's stay. No.
I wasn't like a huge fan of his, but until like that era, like when he got those matches out of the Ultimate Warrior, then I think he finally clicked, and I think he finally got it. And then he went to
Right.
WCW, and he actually had good matches with just about everybody in there. And unfortunately, the next guy on our list,
Well, did you like him with Rude and Bull, the tag team champs?
I did, but you know, but again, you could protect him in a tag team.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, he
Yeah.
didn't have to do a whole lot.
Yeah,
of it,
very
but,
true,
But
true.
but the next guy that we're going to mention is the guy that ended Rick Rude's career, actually, and that is the guy that a lot of people considered the WCW icon for many years, and that is none other than Sting and Brace Beemer. Sting, and Ultimate Warrior's former tag team partner starting
Yeah, they
out,
used to be the Blade Runners in Memphis, right?
and UWF.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brace Beemer. Sting, overrated.
Yes, way overrated. Probably one of the most overrated wrestlers that I've ever seen.
Wow.
And you know, and you say, well, okay, well, how can you say that Sting's overrated and Hogan isn't? Well, Sting didn't draw the money that Hogan did. Sting couldn't sell. He could not. He always. And I'll put Sting in a. There are a bunch of people that I group in with Sting as far as being overrated. And some of the names, you know, people may be surprised for it, but I'll put like no, I can't do that, not yet. But Sting, he didn't. It's almost like he didn't know what he was doing.
I don't think he did
Right.
for a long period of
Yeah.
time.
He couldn't lead a match. He never really made it look like he was getting his tail kicked, and then, you know, called selling. He had the same expression on his face like the whole match, no matter what, until he screamed. Like that whole crow gimmick. And then the guy, whatever money he did make, he agrees to do this stupid crow gimmick, and it killed him. It killed whatever he had. And granted, they did get some ratings on the WCW pay-per-views from it, but
Well, I will say this, just to throw this out there. Any time that they put a title on him, he never held it very long because he would not draw the money. If you
Right.
look into it, you know, I don't care what people say about Sting. If you look into it, he did not draw money in WCW as champion.
right.
That's why he never held it very long.
Yeah. He wasn't I didn't get why people thought he was as good. Even you'll hear some people on interviews, people like, you know, wrestlers saying, "Oh, how great he was in the ring, how great he was to work with." I can see that from an athletic perspective. You know, you could probably pick him up pretty easy. He was an athlete and a half, but gosh, it's like, man, how can you think that guy was good?
Now, Richie, I mean, you watched WCW as well, right?
Yeah, I watched it.
NWA.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you might not have been familiar with Sting's early stuff.
No.
But as far as you know, how would you rate Sting?
I don't know if I'd say he was overrated. I would give him like the average, you know, because I only knew him with his crow shtick, you know, the mysterious. And today I wouldn't understand the whole nostalgia behind it because it did get kind of old for me. But then
There wasn't a lot to it, you know?
yeah, and the matches that I saw him in were a lot of tag team matches. So
Okay.
I never got into he wasn't like someone that I really got into as a heel or as a face, and I never really got into his matches too much. But he wasn't somebody that I could say he was overrated because I wasn't into watching those matches. And it wasn't.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was him. I don't know what it was.
All right.
But I'd more watch WCW just for Ric Flair.
Yeah.
That was always on Saturday nights so I'd be watching that and Saturday Night Live.
Okay.
Back
Yeah.
and forth.
Yeah, I mean,
Sometimes I miss Stings.
yeah, Sting's
In favor of the fat comedian.
when they tried to turn Sting heel later on in WCW, that was a total debacle. It didn't work. It was pathetic. But I will say this. I thought when I first saw the Blade Runners in UWF that Sting had a lot more talent than Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
Which he did. And then we kind of watched him. Well, then when NWA absorbed UWF, the only really, they kind of phased everybody out from the UWF except a few guys. For whatever reason, they decided that they were going to push Sting as their future. So obviously they build towards Clash of the Champions #1. And it was supposed to be, I think originally it was going to be an hour-long match with him and Ric Flair with the 3 judges if it goes to a time limit draw.
Yeah.
And then I think it changed to 45 minutes. But either way, I remember watching that match and thinking, okay, Sting's done. This experiment is over because he had to resort to doing the same moves over and over and over again. I mean, Flair carried him to a decent enough match, but I was like, okay, well, this just goes to show that this guy is not going to be the future. And boy, was I wrong. They decided to go with him. I mean, they decided to go with him anyway. And, we used to talk about this. A lot of times he would just, it just seemed like he would blank out in the middle of a move. Like he'd be going to give somebody a move and he'd just be like, stop and like forget what he was doing or something. I don't know. Like a deer in headlights. So I was not a Sting fan for a long time. I would definitely say he's overrated. I think nowadays, though, because there's been so many crappy wrestlers that they put on TV and tried to push, I think his TNA era was decent. And then, not that he had like a big run in WWE, his last run, but he actually looked good, I thought, there. But starting out, but I would still say he's overrated, and he's one of the top overrated guys of all time.
He was fun to watch at first, when we first started watching him in, like UWF. Because he was with Eddie Gilbert, with Rick Steiner, and he was kind of hidden. And then when they brought him over into the NWA WCW promotion, and it was kind of the same thing. He was pretty cool, just having squash matches.
Right.
Did a couple interviews.
The build to the Ric Flair match was good.
And then the match happened, and you're just like, ugh.
Yeah, it's just like drop kick, hip toss, press slam.
Yeah.
That was it, over and over and over. Elbow drop. That was pretty much it. But all right. Next guy is a guy that I kind of compared to Sting somewhat, and that is basically the face of WWE for pretty much, well, not so much the last couple of years, but for a good 10-year run in the not too distant past, and that is John Cena. Brace Beemer, what are your thoughts on?
Not overrated. And that, I can see how people would think that John Cena is overrated, but the guy can sell. I mean, he doesn't every once in a while. And, I got to admit that I really haven't seen him like the last 5 years. I just can't watch it. But before that, unless we watch like a WrestleMania, I think that's probably the only like wrestling card that I watch from WWE.
Yeah, and I think I don't remember what happened, what time, but I think maybe, I don't know if it was last year's WrestleMania that he was in a tag team match with his girlfriend against The Miz and his wife.
Oh,
that might have been
Bella.
That might have been the year before. I don't know.
Yeah, because I remember him getting destroyed by the Undertaker. He was out in the crowd. He was just, I don't know what the heck they were doing. He was kind of acting like a bad guy.
Yeah,
he was
what?
out in the crowd.
Yeah, I think that was last year's, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Where
and
he
then
was
they had the
calling
kid.
him out. And
They
then
had
Must
the-
have been because I didn't watch last
beat him
year.
in like 5
They had
minutes.
the idiot kid win the tag team belt.
Was that WrestleMania?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're right.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
But
I
anyway-
forgot about that. But either way, the last two WrestleManias, he wasn't involved in like big, long, drawn out matches or anything.
But I don't think he's overrated. just because of the work that he does. I mean, the guy he's really been their only constant for 15 years now, maybe.
Since he came in.
Yeah, I mean, it took him a little while to get there, but I mean,
he's a company man. Definitely.
Yeah, I don't think I don't look at him as being overrated. I mean, needs to improve, maybe, but not overrated. Not somebody like that.
Richie?
I tell you what, when he first came in, his time was up. Seriously, when he first started, I just no, I didn't like him. He was
talking about the heel, the rap.
Yeah, he's really
the rap gimmick?
Yeah, he's really overrated. Then I would say
I thought
definitely
that was great
overrated.
though. I like that.
That shtick could have ended a long time before it did. And when he went face, I felt he was overrated for like a long time. In fact, we went to a Raw show back before WrestleMania 23, way back. And I remember we were in Grand Rapids and started the chant, Cena can't wrestle. That was the first time the chant ever happened.
You're taking credit for that?
Well, I shouldn't take credit because my friends actually started it, but I was a part of it. so for a long time, just didn't like the guy. Felt like he was overrated. And over the time, he kind of won me over. Again, it's probably the work ethic, the message he has, and the fact that when he went face, he kind of stayed face. And
yeah, he did.
Yeah, and like he can't go heel. He can't go heel. I don't think he can do heel.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think he's
just a natural baby face.
He's a natural baby face, and he's not like Hogan who can go heel.
Yeah.
And that was one of the greatest things when Hogan went heel because he was always the face. And I don't think John Cena is a heel at all. And as long as he stays face, I don't think he's overrated. But if they try to make him heel, you're gonna start feeling he's overrated again. It goes back.
Well,
it's a tiering scale on him.
You know what? There's a lot to be said about that because, again, this is probably not how they work it now because everything's so scripted. But when you're a bad guy, when you're the heel in wrestling, traditionally you were allowed a little more freedom. You could call the match.
Yeah.
Not everything's so scripted, but it's so easy. It's much easier to be a bad guy. It's much easier to be a heel, and
you can get away with more as a heel also.
And you can screw up, and it doesn't mean as much as if a good guy screws up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And he came to do an anti-hero where he could walk the line. He came and do that.
Well, you know what? Pretty much that's what he does, right? I mean, his character is
not so much.
No,
not so much after he turned babyface. I don't think.
Once he's
maybe a little while
like
they
half
were
heel,
trying to...
half baby face. That's what I mean. Like the crowd reaction.
Oh, the crowd reaction. Yeah.
But his character wise,
but his character is.
He can't do the anti-hero character.
Yeah.
It would die. It'd be just as bad as being a heel.
Yeah, I mean, he'll acknowledge that fact, but still, he's pretty much super white meat babyface, just about as you can get at this point. But I'll agree with you, Richie. But I actually liked the hip hop gimmick when he first came in there as a heel. As a babyface, I was not a huge fan of his. Like I said, he kind of reminded me of Sting. Getting the big push. Not that he screwed up a lot, but he did screw up a lot. I mean, he didn't execute the moves correctly. He botched a lot. But I don't know. I'm having a hard time calling him overrated because he did carry the company on his back, and he did sell a lot of tickets, and he did sell a lot of merchandise, and he does like a lot for Make-A-Wish. He does a lot for the fans outside of the ring. So I respect a lot of what he has done. So I'm kind of in the middle for this. If you would have asked me 8 years ago, 10 years ago, I definitely would have said, yes, he's definitely overrated. I think I've changed my tune over the last so many years, but that may have something to do with him kind of not being pushed at the very top as much anymore either. That I thought got old. It was just, I don't know. It just seemed like it seemed like they would try to build people up to go after him, but it never lasted very long, and he would always get the title back.
Is he going to be the 17-time champion?
Probably.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they'll.
One last time, the one-up Ric Flair.
I don't know, but even if that is the case, okay, let's talk about Ric Flair. If that is the case, that is still not the case. That is the WWE's version of it, but really Flair held like what? In
23
reality, yeah, I think it was like 26 or something.
Yeah.
That WWE doesn't acknowledge. So
Hell, NWA didn't even at the time.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, they didn't. But in reality, that is how many times Cena would really have to win the title. But a lot of those were like, just like a day or a couple days or Flair, especially like when he was wrestling in foreign countries and stuff.
It's kind of like Booker T would win in Australia, and somewhere on the flight back, he'd lose the title.
Right. So let's talk about Ric Flair then.
Oh, before we go there, I want to say that Cena is underrated. Because we're talking about overrated, but I think he's the opposite.
I would agree with you.
I think he's
more
probably
underrated.
How could you say that? He's had the title like I don't know how many times. I mean, and he was the face of the company for
maybe
so many years. He was the guy at the top for so
and
many
that's
years.
why.
Maybe fan respect, he's underrated. The fans don't respect him.
Yeah, I mean that's what. I mean he's been on top forever, so that's why I'm saying he's underrated as compared to overrated.
I disagree. But and
we need to put him, Hogan, and The Rock in the same arena and see which one gets the biggest pop. And then the one that's got the lowest pop, we're like underrated.
Well, let's move on to Ric Flair then. He was actually on the ranker list, but he was pretty low on the list. Way down on the list actually. So, but I'm sure there's some people that consider Ric Flair overrated as well.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think, Brace Beemer?
I don't think he's overrated at all. Probably the greatest world champion of the last couple decades. You can make an argument for like Harley Race or Dory Funk, but other than that, I can see why people would say he would be overrated. They say all his stuff's repetitive or whatever, but man, it works. And all that time, he's on TV everywhere. You see all of his stuff. Every video that comes out, he's all over. He couldn't go hide out in Birmingham, Alabama and have a match because it would get shown on TV and it looked just like the match he had in, St. Louis. Not just like, but it depended.
Woo! Woo! Hey, woo! He is articulated right there.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that.
Some parts do move.
Okay.
Yeah, so for a guy who had to wrestle that much against people that he didn't even know and got that kind of reaction and that kind of effort for that many of years, no way he's overrated.
Richie, what say you?
Oh, I got so much opinion about Ric Flair.
The Nature Boy, Ric Flair.
Ric Flair. Well, of course he's not overrated. He's got Detroit connections, and that's always gets you right here. Started, when he got adopted, he lived in Michigan for a bit. But let me tell you something.
That's true. Good point.
Yeah.
That's a quality call.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
If Ric Flair is in the WWE when Hogan's there, Ric Flair is the biggest star of all time. And I think because he wasn't with the WWE when WWE was going mainstream with wrestling and making all the mainstream connections.
Well, he was there in the early 90s. So you're saying like
talking
Hulkamania era?
WrestleMania era.
Yeah, 83, 84, 85.
Back then,
right.
Cyndi Lauper era.
Right.
Ric Flair was not there. If Ric Flair's there, he's the biggest star of all time. And he could do what I said that Hogan did earlier, but he wasn't there. He was in WCW, which, when I was growing up, I'd watch CBC, Channel 9, it'd be WWE, Saturday Night Main Event, and NBC, WWE. You'd have to have cable to watch WCW.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like I'd only see WCW when I went to my parents' friend's house when they were playing euchre, and I was watching wrestling with Stacy was her name. Their daughter. We'd watch wrestling together. And that's
Any marriage or anything happen out of that?
No. Okay. We'd only watch we'd watch WCW and Saturday Night Live, like I said before. We'd flip back and forth, and so like even my being able to see Ric Flair was very minimal. But Ric Flair was one of my favorite wrestlers, and I feel compared to Hulk Hogan, he's underrated. Like people maybe not so much now, but there was a period where people would like overrate Hulk Hogan. Like when they met in that match, everybody was like, Hulk Hogan, this way better than Ric Flair, but I think Ric Flair was way better than Hogan, and like every dimension of it.
You know what? When Flair went to WWF in the early '90s, and he eventually won the belt, but almost right off the bat, because he came in with the gimmick, the real world champion gimmick.
Yeah,
Him and Hogan wrestled on house shows, and the original plan was to have that match at WrestleMania. For whatever reason, that didn't happen. Flair ended up wrestling Savage, and Hogan ended up wrestling Sid Vicious or Sid Justice.
I'd like to know why that didn't happen.
But
because-
they claim that the crowd was not giving them the reaction that they thought. This is what I think, because I just watched a match between Hogan and Flair, and it might have been, I think it was from Madison Square Garden, and it might have been the first match they had. It probably wasn't the first match they had in WWF, but it was probably the first one they had at Madison Square Garden. The crowd was 50-50. That is, I'm pretty sure that is why, because they would not have wanted to have that big arena at that WrestleMania 50-50 for Hulk, or if the crowd turned and started rooting for Flair throughout the match, they wouldn't have been able to deal with that at that time.
Why?
They needed Hogan to be the guy, the big baby face,
plus
the
didn't-
big hero.
Plus, at that time, wasn't that whole Flair thing like some sort of lawsuit deal? Like he wasn't going to be there in the WWF for a while.
I don't
He
No,
was only
he
going to be there
said-
for a short bit, wasn't it?
I don't think I had.
I thought there was
anything
some
to do
sort
with
of
the law.
lawsuit deal.
The lawsuit was them trying to keep the belt.
Yeah.
Because Jim Hurd, the idiot that ran WCW at the time, didn't realize that Ric Flair owned that belt, or something, had put money down for the belt. There was like a deposit that he had put down, so they didn't give him his deposit. So he's like, okay, well, I'm taking the belt. So that was the lawsuit. They were trying to keep the belt off television, and eventually they did exchange it. They started using, in the match that I saw, actually, he was using because you could see it for a second, but they'd blur it out. But you could see it for a second. They were using one of their old tag team titles. So that's where that came from.
Okay.
But to what you were saying about, Flair being more underrated and Hogan kind of being overrated, I think I could totally see that, because when Flair is already back in WCW, but then when Hogan goes into WCW, you're thinking, oh, okay, now we're actually going to start seeing these matches. Well, you do, but Hogan buried him like in almost every match.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably where a lot of that comes from, where people would see that, think that Hogan's better than Flair. Bischoff obviously was not a huge Flair fan, thought that his time was done and tried to like phase him out as much as he could.
I mean, the guy's still around. He was just on the episode the other day when it was going to be his birthday or something, and Bautista just pulls him out. He does anything.
Yeah.
He does anything. I mean,
Exactly.
Exactly.
Now
You don't see Hogan doing that stuff.
Now, I wish, and I think that they could have got away with this. They could have easily got away with this. I think Flair's last run before he retired in WWF, they could have thrown the title on him one more time.
I thought they were gonna. I thought they would have.
But, I mean, they didn't really use him that way, but I think they definitely could have. They could have easily did that. They could have had Evolution come out there, cost whoever the belt, put Flair on, even if you just had it on him for like a month or whatever.
Right.
I mean, why not?
70
Just
years
put it on
old.
him one more time. Well, no, I'm not saying now.
Yeah.
I'm saying back before he
Yeah.
retired against
You
Shawn
know-
Michaels. But
The other thing with Flair, the Flair and Hogan and why not at WrestleMania and the comparison between the two, you got to remember, like, you had to go to your friend's house to see Ric Flair in cable.
Right.
And a lot of places in the country had cable, but they didn't carry WTBS.
It's true. too, yeah.
So if you have the first loop around with Flair and Hogan, they didn't really advertise it on TV. It wasn't spawned from an angle. It was just, hey, here's Flair and Hogan at the Cow Palace in L.A.
yeah,
Well,
that's true.
L.A. didn't get WTBS. They're like, Ric Flair wasn't like a big fan. I don't know if L.A. didn't get TBS, but NWA had NWA hadn't had a territory
More
over
the
there for years.
East Coast mainly, weren't they? In Midwest.
Southwest, and wherever Ric Flair would travel before, but all of a sudden he's there in California, and they really don't know WCW and,
Right.
and all that. And then
Exactly.
here's Flair and Hogan. Okay, well, yeah, no kidding, it didn't draw as well as you'd hope. It'd get a decent amount. It's not like they drew 850, but instead of getting 14,000, they'd get like 8 or 9. So
Right.
That's another angle to that, as well as going into a hostile area where the fans might be Flair country and not Hogan country.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Our next guy is somebody that Ric Flair probably wrestled like a lot. A ton-
3,722 times.
tons of times.
Okay.
He didn't really have the longevity.
Is there somebody that has a boat?
He didn't really have the longevity that like Flair had. But let's talk about that. But this guy was kind of pegged by the NWA to be their Hulk Hogan, and I'm talking about Lex Luger. Brace Beemer.
Oh.
Yeah, overrated. He just got used in spots where they shouldn't have put him in. like the whole, he's almost like a Sting in a way, because the latter part of his career he was much better. Like the latter part of WCW, he was probably better than he had been. Oh, and there goes Flair.
Woo, doing his flap.
But yeah, he wasn't like a hardcore like wrestling guy. Wasn't like a wrestling fan. He was considered aloof by his peers just because of the way he was. He was just a different breed of cat, and he really didn't like. It seemed like he didn't really catch on to what wrestling was until much later. So I would say overrated. I mean, I think he was put in some very bad spots that he shouldn't have been put in. Like they made him the Lex Express tour in the WWF, and they put him as a horseman when he wasn't ready. So, yeah, overrated.
Richie, are you more familiar with his WWF run or
the narcissist? But that was pretty good. That should have been a lot.
Yeah,
better.
more.
Yeah, at first there was the narcissist, but then they kind of made him Mr. USA Luger.
Yeah, which
Yeah. It was. I don't know.
Liver
If
lips.
it might have been just storylines they gave him. I don't know. He didn't appeal to me too much. Like I don't know if I could really say he's overrated or underrated right now, because I just didn't see him that much.
he's a natural heel, and they kept trying to make him a babyface.
Yeah.
Well, he was, like I said, I think NWA thought that they had a Hulk Hogan-ish guy
Yeah.
in the likes of him. So I think he was another guy that kind of got too much too soon. They brought him in as a horseman after he had done his stint in Florida. And honestly, I have gone back and watched a couple of his matches in Florida against Jesse Barr. They were amazing. Why he couldn't do that when he went to NWA, I don't know. But, he was a horseman, and I think that was all designed for him to eventually turn on the horseman and then get the big babyface push. He got so many shots at Flair on pay-per-view, on house shows, and just they never let him win the title from Flair. I think that's a good thing. I would have been highly upset if they would have put the title on Luger, because he was not ready. But Flair was able to get good matches out of him. But I would definitely say, and I agree with you, I think later on when he wasn't getting the huge push anymore in WCW, I think they put him in a tag team with Buff Bagwell and stuff. I think he did some of his best work later on, like the twilight of his career. I think he did, but I would definitely say Luger was overrated as well. Now, I kind of don't even want to go here because I have a feeling I know what Brace Beemer is going to say. But my favorite wrestler of all time, Bret the Hitman Hart. He was very low on the ranker list, but he was on there. So, Brace Beemer, what say you about Bret the Hitman Hart?
I say overrated. Now, me and Mad Dog are going to be fighting here in a minute. You're going to have to referee. I think he was. I don't know, man.
I might be biased referee in this one.
I think I say overrated just because he made it to the championship level, like the world title, and it's wrestling and it kind of means something, but then again, it doesn't. Had he not been there and he just stayed like Intercontinental, maybe sniffed the title for a little bit, I don't think I'd put him in overrated. I just don't think he was good enough worker
Oh my God.
on the selling aspect, in the face, in the promos and everything else. Now, from
I'll
all
give
the
you-
other stuff, putting the match together, phenomenal.
And I'll give you promos too.
Yeah, you want a good match. You want, like look at Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin at that WrestleMania. One of the best WrestleMania matches of all time. I like the match. But I just think overall, I don't think that I don't think he was as good of a worker overall. But for certain parts, like the excellence of execution, I'll give him that. The guy could execute moves. And he knew how to put a match together. But there's just that whole part of it of like really getting the other person over aside from the match itself. I don't think he could do that. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
I see what you're saying. Richie, what do you think? I mean, I know that you
Enough is enough.
saw a lot of Bret Hart.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Well, no.
You didn't?
Really?
No, because right away, I just did not like him. So I would get up and go get popcorn during his
Oh.
matches and probably talk on the phone for about 40 minutes.
Was
'cause
he-
they were long,
So he
boring
was like the
matches.
girls and the midgets match for you.
He was.
Was he a baby face at the time?
It didn't matter if he was a baby face or a heel. He never won me over. I would say definitely overrated. I'd put him up in the top 2
Oh my
as being overrated. It couldn't his promos. I didn't like his promos. His matches were drawn out.
Okay, what about his promos when he was part of the heel faction, the Hart Foundation?
He was. I didn't like him in it.
I thought they were his
It was
some of
probably
his best stuff,
work, but
Yeah,
it just
exactly.
I just
Yeah,
I
didn't
think
think
so
it was
too.
enough to really put him over, I think he was selfish in real life because he didn't put people over, and I felt like Stone Cold carried him in that match at WrestleMania.
No, because and if you listen to what Stone Cold says, he gives all the credit to Bret for getting him through that match.
Stone Cold lost
He
a
was
lot of
not-
blood in that match.
He was Stone Cold was not at the level yet where
I don't
you
know
could
about
give him
that.
credit for carrying Bret in that match.
There's not a lot of people that carried Bret Hart. I mean, honestly,
But I mean, in my opinion, Bret could have a good match with anyone, and he pretty much did. He never made a lot of mistakes. Like I said, I'll give you the promo aspect of it, especially when he was a babyface. I mean, I don't think he could cut good babyface promos. I thought after he turned back heel, he was all right, but I mean, guys like I saw him have good matches with Kevin Nash and good matches with like Sid Vicious.
Yeah.
And I mean, just the way that he did stuff, and I think a lot of times they wanted to kind of move on from him, but they always seemed like they have to go back to him in the early 90s, especially. I think that, I mean, obviously he was my favorite, but I mean, I liked him even in the Hart Foundation era.
yeah.
That's
Well,
when
you
when
liked
he
them
was growing
before
up.
that.
I kind of
didn't you?
like. That's when I was leaving.
No, that's when I first saw him.
Oh, okay. I thought you saw him as a single.
I don't mean what's that?
I thought you saw him before that, like as a singles.
I'll put it this way.
I don't remember seeing him.
Oh,
If I
okay.
did, I don't remember. I remember, I in my mind, the first time I saw him wrestle, it was him and Anvil like winning a squash match when they had first put them together with Jimmy Hart.
with the light blue tights.
Yeah,
when
yeah.
when they were pushing Bret Hart is basically when I was leaving wrestling. It was one of the reasons I started leaving stopped watching wrestling until the Attitude Era picked back up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you took a what is that, like a 10-year hiatus probably?
Well,
No,
it took a
not
few
that
years.
long.
It took a few years
Right.
for me to start dwindling down,
Huh.
But then the whole just Bret Hart, and I was like, I was getting tired of it.
So who would you have preferred to take his spot at that point?
Well, actually, I don't think there was anybody there yet. I think it was just a lull in the company.
Well, they had, I mean, I named off all those guys, but I mean, like I said, he would, as a champion, I mean, he would go out there, he'd have a match against 1-2-3 Kid. He'd go out there and have a great match against Hakushi. He had some great matches against a guy that doesn't get hardly any credit, who's wrestling again in Ring of Honor at like 50 years old and having great matches, and that's Pierre from the Quebecers. You know, he was doing like a pirate gimmick.
Oh my
kinda.
gosh, I remember that guy.
But okay, now Brace, you wrote something down.
Yeah, you know, because I'd thought of this before, and, like, especially with the Bret Hart, because I don't know if he's on your list, but I almost want to put Shawn Michaels in the same category, in a way, in Triple H.
We'll talk about Triple H.
Okay.
What about Marty Jannetty?
Now with
But those two, I think, are head and shoulders above Triple H.
yeah,
Because
I do too.
I mean, if you just off the top of your head, if you say, give me a classic match or a great match with Shawn Michaels or Bret Hart, I mean, I can come up with a few, and I think you guys could too.
Yeah.
I can't think of a great match with Triple H. When I think of Triple H, I don't think of great matches.
Yeah, me neither.
He's solid,
Yeah.
but I just don't think of any matches that really like blew me away that he was ever in.
I think he was able to be aided by all the stables he was in. Triple H.
Probably.
Sure.
Yeah. I think
think-
that was
I
like
think
a
that
big
It's a
part.
different
Kinda-
time too,
Kind
and
of put
a lot
put-
less required.
And I'm not saying he had
perspective on
bad
it,
matches. He had good matches.
He
Good
did, yeah.
matches, but
But-
nothing that stands out as great to me.
Yeah, I didn't
But-
understand why they put the
Okay.
title on. So
Okay, so I wrote something down. I was snickering over here when I thought about this before. Is say, okay, if I think of somebody is good or bad or overrated or underrated, I at one time I kind of fell back on this thing. Well, could they work with a broomstick? Have you heard that opinion before? Like Shawn Michaels is so good, Jerry Lawler's so good, they could work with a broomstick.
oh, Fred Astaire could dance with a
Sure.
coat rack.
Yeah,
Right.
the
Make it
same
look good.
the same
Yeah.
concept.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Now, if I applied, and with Bret Hart, I applied this to it. Could he work with a broomstick and have it be entertaining? And I wouldn't think so because
No.
the way he sells.
Yeah,
And so that's not like my benchmark, but you know, that's like part of it. Like on the other hand, Shawn Michaels, he could work with a broomstick. You know,
Well, I disagree with you. I think that Brett could easily work with a broomstick as well.
I don't think he could make it entertaining enough because I don't think he sold.
that
He didn't sell enough. I mean, this is probably unfair, but look at like a Funk or a Murdoch or somebody who staggers around when they get hit. They're staggering around like they're drunk or whatever.
yeah.
Well,
That would come in handy with a broomstick. But if you're just getting flipped over and you're laying there and your face never changes, then not laying on the ground, but you know what I mean. He wasn't.
I
as
disagree.
much
I disagree with
animated.
you there too. I
for-
disagree with you there too. His face did change. He didn't just have the same facial
Really?
expression. Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Around the
I
time
go back and watch some of his old matches because that's not the case.
I remember then the whole big wrestling's fake thing. You know, we'd all fight it. No, it's not. You know, but then after watching a Bret Hart match, I was like, oh, maybe it is. And I was a young kid at that time, and I was like, yeah, maybe it is.
See, most people that I talked to that weren't even wrestling fans at the time thought that Brett made it look more real than most everybody else at the time.
I just, I don't.
And
feel
and
like
that
he
was like a
sell his
big
bumps,
thing.
You know?
And that was like a big
Yeah.
thing that he kind of prided himself on. And maybe that's why he didn't do like all the staggering around because, you know, in his mind he wanted
Well, yeah,
to make
that
it
wasn't going to be
seem
him anyway.
No, and he wanted
know?
to make it seem more
He wanted to make
realistic.
He wanted to make him seem like he was just a badass and he could take a beating and oh, it didn't hurt me.
Well, that's why it's wrestling, you know. I mean, wrestling is like Baskin Robbins.
I'm a
you know, there's
superhero.
A bunch of different flavors to choose from.
Right?
All right. Well, since we're talking about badasses and superheroes, that would be a good time to mention this guy. A guy that got over kind of in spite of what they were doing with him because they were definitely trying to protect him because he did not know what he was doing. But this in turn got him over huge with the WCW crowd. And I am talking about none other than Bill Goldberg. Brace Beemer. Bill Goldberg, overrated or underrated. And the guy that ended Bret Hart's career, by the way.
Yeah, overrated. That still pisses me off. That I put Bret Hart in the underrated category, but
Overrated.
yeah, overrated. But when he had to go in there and fight Goldberg, had his match with Goldberg, and Goldberg kicked him in the head and wrecked his career. That pissed me off. Goldberg should have never. And great. He's kind of like Luger. He was put in a bad spot, but yeah, overrated. Should have never been in that spot. Did not have the skills, the talent. He may have been like an athlete at one point, but he was an uncontrollable athlete. He just didn't have. It's like he didn't have hands. He wasn't soft. He was just like a bull. And they brought him in no matter how much training he had. And they had to have him in shorter matches like the Ultimate Warrior. But no, I just never got it. Because I was used to people paying their dues and knowing what they were doing before they got a spot like that. So yeah, overrated.
Richie, did you see that whole era? Did you see Goldberg's rise?
I've always watched Goldberg.
Were you a fan?
I was a fan of Goldberg, but I will agree with you, overrated. I like the badass aspect coming in, and I like the fact that he wouldn't be beat. But quick matches. I mean, I can't do anything but put him in overrated because I never really seen him take a beating. I never thought he was gonna lose. Which, even though he comes in and they did the same with the Brock Lesnar. He comes in, he just destroys everybody, and I like that. Destroy everybody for a while, but eventually some underdog's going to beat you, or somebody's going to beat you. Maybe another big dog comes in and beats you.
Right.
He was over, man.
But I just felt like there was some matches, he should. The guy would hit him whatever. Sell it like it didn't hurt. But there's some guys that would hit him. I mean, come on. I felt like Great Khali could come in and hit him, and he'd be like, oh.
Right.
Let me give you the jackknife. It's all over.
Yeah, they had to.
They didn't build his matches, and that's why I'd put him in the overrated.
Okay, now I don't think, and definitely overrated from me, but I don't think that initially that was their goal. I don't think that they knew that they were going to like Bill Goldberg debuts on Nitro, and I think he beats Hugh Morris in a minute or 30 seconds, whatever it is. The crowd responds to it. Have never seen this guy before. They respond to it. So then they're like, oh, okay, well, let's keep doing this.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, they're protecting him because they know that he's not a good worker. In the process, he injures a lot of good workers, which pisses me off, like La Parka. And I don't remember, but there was a laundry list of people that he injured along the way to the top. But because of this fact, a lot of fans had probably never really seen this before. The whole undefeated thing and winning these matches, and it was kind of exciting to see him come in there and do the spear and the jackhammer and stuff, and the crowd was into it. But I don't think that was their initial storyline for him. I just think that it all kind of happened organically. They're like, hey,
I can see that.
Let's see where this goes.
Right. Sullivan and Bischoff both kind of said that, just kind of, he got over, and then they had this thing on their hands, and
so eventually, well, I think he eventually beats Raven for the U.S. title, and then that leads to him beating Hogan. I think in their mind they were like, man, we need to strike while the iron's hot. We can't just let this go. We got to do it.
Oh no, you had to.
Yeah. So eventually he comes back to. Well, he goes to WWE, really doesn't do a whole lot there because they're not doing with him what they did in WCW. I mean, I think he won the title. I think he did win the title, but, he feuded with Triple H for a little bit. But, yeah, just really had kind of a lackluster run there, but then comes back a couple years ago, beats Brock, and, does I don't know, 5 appearances or whatever.
Well, they have 3 matches, 3 WrestleMania matches or something.
Well, it wasn't No, they only had the one WrestleMania match,
but
but I think they had a couple pay-per-view.
That was the WrestleMania was the lamest one. That was when the Brock was leaving. And it was just please.
Yeah.
Well, they probably drew money off it.
They did, but it was a big disappointment.
Yeah. All right. So a guy that had Goldberg's initial last match in WWF at WrestleMania was another guy that was leaving the same time, and that was a guy we're going to talk about next, Brock Lesnar. They actually let Goldberg beat Brock Lesnar at that point because they were supposedly more upset with Brock leaving at the time than they were with Goldberg leaving at the time. But anyway, Brace Beemer, Brock Lesnar, overrated or not?
No way. If anything, Brock Lesnar might be underrated. I mean, it's kind of my low go-to thing here, but Brock Lesnar can wrestle. I've seen like the matches. Like if I see a WrestleMania, and I'm like a fan of his from like the UFC too. You know, the MMA. That guy is the most realistic person, athlete, entertainer, wrestler that's been in the business since Kurt Angle. Really. I mean, it's like almost you can't screw the guy up. He can have matches. He can go hard way. He can be physical. I mean, that's kind of what he is anyway. But I just don't see how you could call him underrated when he's over that much. And he's pretty much their big attraction. WWE's, for my money, when I try and watch, he's really like their only attraction.
Richie Rollins, what say you about
I-
Brock Lesnar?
I love the way they pushed him when he came in, like the Goldberg story, come in and just brutalize everybody because he's a brute. He's a brute, and in the ring he's pretty good. I don't like his promos. I don't like the fact that they just have to use Paul Heyman all the time. I love Paul Heyman though. I mean, I just think Brock can't stand. Brock can't stand alone.
I'd rather hear.
I don't think Brock can stand alone when it comes to the promos at all. I think
No,
he
you're
actually does
you're
need
probably
something
right,
like
and he's
that.
got a little bit of a high pitched voice.
And
So I think that's part of the
you know,
reason too.
I don't know if he's underrated. I don't think he's definitely not overrated. He's a bully though. He beat up a one-legged guy in a wrestling.
That was one of the-
Zach Gowen.
I
That
was
one of
there.
the
I
most.
was there.
I was there
That's
too.
awesome.
It was one of the most
Yeah,
brutal
we were there.
matches I ever saw in my life. you
That
know?
was one of the last wrestling matches where you had a feeling, you know, that it could be real.
Yeah.
For me, anyway.
Well, you know, I could
he
kind
bled
of.
all over the place.
I
He's
met-
a one-legged guy. The guy was my size.
I met
Yeah.
Zach Gowen, and I kind of could see it being real and stuff. But yeah, just yeah. I mean, he took out an overrated guy that day for sure.
So you don't think he was overrated?
No, I don't think at all he was overrated. I think he's exactly where he's supposed to be.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think Brock's overrated at all, and I think a lot of this comes from his stranglehold that he's had on a title that I think they kind of made for him, the Universal title. I think that they kind of made that for him, so he could be kind of like an old school attraction where he has that belt.
Yeah,
He can come
I
out,
feel yeah.
beat whoever in 5 minutes, whatever, and leave. I mean, I think that this belt was actually made for this run that he's had, and I think a lot of people knock him for that because it pisses him off,
Yeah.
which is what I think it is intended to do. But
I
you know.
actually like seeing the belt stay with somebody for a good.
I do
period of
too.
time.
I do,
except for
I do
Triple
too.
H when he had it for 2 years. It
Yeah.
seemed like 2 years.
So do you think?
I agree with you. I'm glad that they've gone back to letting people hold the titles
Yeah,
longer.
I mean, yeah. Occasionally you win it, lose it the next night, or keep it for a few months. But it's nice to see someone actually just carry it for good duration.
Do you think the overrated call for Brock Lesnar comes from the fact that he's not just exclusively wrestling? Because I know being like an old school
no.
wrestling fan,
They were,
you know,
there
like
was-
if somebody was a Hollywood guy like The Rock
Yeah.
and wrestling doing the both, I'm like, for me, I'm like, nah.
But
You
He
either
was- I
leave
think-
Hollywood and come here, or
I think Brock was falling under the overrated talk way before he left WWE.
because
I
yeah, I'm
think a
just
lot of
kind of
people
it
tell you
just
something.
surprises me, and I'm kind of.
But I think
so.
that has
I
a-
think so
trying to-
too. I think it's just the way.
I think it has a lot to do with the promo. He actually needs somebody to do the promo for him.
and I think it's the way that they pushed him, kind of like Goldberg.
Yes.
I think that probably is more of the reason why the IWC thinks that he's overrated, because like Richie said, I think it was even before he left that he was kind of getting that reputation,
Yeah.
just because just because he kind of destroyed everybody. But how can you not have a guy like that destroy people? I mean,
And it worked. Like Goldberg didn't in the end, you know?
Yeah, I mean that was the big buildup between him and Goldberg, was they both came in like destroying people, and so I wanted to see a big destroying match between both of them, and that was the letdown, you know.
Yeah. Now here's a guy that But I remember, like, before I had seen Brock Lesnar on television, he was working in Ohio Valley. But I remember reading the reports at some house shows when he first started wrestling in WWE, and people were comparing him to this guy that we're going to talk about next, which I don't see, but I think maybe looks wise, if you're like sitting in the nosebleeds, possibly. And I'm talking about Scott Steiner, Brace Beemer. Scott Steiner, overrated or not?
Not. I don't think he's overrated because he almost had like two different careers. You know, he had, you know, the superstar gimmick, and then he had, you know, the just rough nose wrestler gimmick.
The Michigan.
Scott Steiner.
Yeah.
I don't think he's overrated. I don't think so.
Papa Pum.
Because he used to have some like pretty good matches, you know, and he just got too big and slowed down and became more of a
I think it's
more of an attraction. More his promos meant more because he got better at them.
Yeah.
You know, and he wasn't really great on a promo, but they were so interesting to a lot of people,
Right.
you know, and his look. So no, I don't think overrated.
Richie?
I think because he got bigger and slower, it kind of seemed like he was overrated if you caught him late in his career. But if you watched him back when he was wearing the headgear and all that stuff, you'd never be overrated. So I don't think he's overrated.
His work was a lot for me, like him as a tag team with his brother
Yeah,
is kind of
I
where
think
I
his-
remember him as
his
opposed to the
early career.
Papa
I
Pump.
loved him. You know, when he became Big Pump and
yeah.
huge and entertaining still. But it was just, but if you knew him back then, it was just kind of like a 180 that you didn't expect.
Yeah.
It just kind of threw you off.
Man, I'm on the fence with this one, only because even when he was doing the tag team stuff, I mean, I don't remember him injuring a lot of people, but it seemed like he would try to execute certain moves and they just didn't look right, and it looked like he was like really well. I know for a fact that one of the knocks on him is the prelim guys. He didn't really protect a lot of times. So you know, for me, that's one knock on him. The Big Papa Pump gimmick. I just wasn't really a fan of. But I mean, great that he was able to like reinvent himself. His promos were horrible. I'm leaning towards overrated myself. And then when he came in and did his last WWE run, that was horrible. I mean, granted, he's older and he's probably got some injuries. I don't know, but that run was just not a good run.
Probably
at all.
shouldn't have been in that position, huh?
Well,
Probably
I mean,
all the steroids.
he was a big name. It was just I don't know what it was. He just he botched a ton. I mean, a ton. Like, and I think that they probably wanted to do something with him because I think they immediately threw him up against Triple H,
Yeah.
and it was just not good.
You know, I can see why people would say overrated too, because you know, going back to the tag teams, when Mad Dog and I, when we're watching them, you know, we're kids, we're thinking, gosh, all they're doing is just throwing people around.
Yeah.
You know, like the whole wrestling aspect of it was going away. You know, before it was all the flips and the flops, it was just, well, big muscle head, we'll throw them around, and then here comes the flipping and flopping. So we were kind of like against that. So you can if you start your base from, depends on what kind of fan you were and what you liked, really.
Yeah,
But
I mean, looking back, they kind of revolutionized tag team wrestling at the time, or at least reinvigorated it. At the time.
That's probably a perfect word.
So
for it.
yeah, so as a tag team together, I think they had some outstanding matches, really, and really WCW was kind of built around them for a short time.
Yeah.
I mean, they created that whole tag team tournament, that Pat O'Connor thing, just so they could win it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, just slightly, I would have to say that he was overrated. But a lot of that comes from like later on, which he was probably, you know, suffering from injuries at that point. Anyway, I mean, that was part of the reason why he had to change it to the Big Papa Pump gimmick. Anyway.
What about his local matches here before he went to Memphis and then WCW locally here with Bruiser Bedlam and the WWA out of Indianapolis with
the
with
Great
Wojo.
Yeah.
I remember watching it. I was kind of excited when I was a kid. That was like the biggest thing that like was happening for that group on TV in a while.
Yeah.
I mean, they had some cool stuff, but that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, young guy coming through, kind of like Sting. You know,
No, I agree. And then when he had his run in Memphis, I thought that was a good run that he had. Not that he won a lot, but yeah, I mean, up until a certain point, I really liked him. I mean, really, my only knock on him from his younger days was just that he didn't really protect people, and it just seemed like he'd pull a move out of his ass in the middle of the match,
a
and
forced
just like
suplex.
yeah, just you know, that was So anyway, let's see. Let's talk about a guy that you and I kind of saw coming up, and that might be why we never felt it. Well, I don't know. Maybe you do feel this way about this guy, but Double J Jeff Jarrett. A lot of people, I know a lot of people that can't stand him. And think that he should not have been at the top of the cards that he's always seemed to be on top of. Not so much in WWF, but I mean he did kind of go there in the beginning. But so what do you think? I don't think Jeff Jarrett as far as
I don't think he's. I mean, I agree that he wasn't like a main event guy. At best, he could like fill in, you know, be a main event every once in a while. He could kind of work up and down the card, but no, I don't think he's overrated because I think he was still good enough. He was good enough in the ring and on the mic, wherever he was placed, to make it somewhat work, you know? So I don't think overrated. I mean, he had well, I guess
I agree with you, Rock.
he had opportunities that he probably shouldn't have gotten just because of all the work that he did behind this. I mean, he was, you know, he part owner and he did a lot of work on the promotion and whatnot. So that's why you're going to see him up on the card.
Yeah, exactly.
But really, coming up in Memphis, he earned his stripes.
He did.
They pushed him, but
did.
yeah, I wouldn't say overrated.
Richie, what do you think?
Part of the career that I saw, I'd say overrated. I would have to
really
go overrated. Yeah, but again, it's just
So
a filler. I could see him as a filler, but as a main eventer and champion, no, I just never felt.
Did you see like when he first came in there with the Double J gimmick and the song
and
all that?
I came in just a little bit later. I knew about that stuff, but I came in a little bit later with him.
So your era was more of like when he was a tag team with Owen Hart, or
that's when I got introduced.
When he was gonna fight China.
Yeah.
Okay.
China.
Yeah. Well, he did.
Yeah, that's right.
He dropped the title to her, but he held him up for money, and that's why.
Yeah, he was working well that contract.
He was supposedly never going to go back, although he is back now, and he's working behind the scenes now. But
see, he can't keep his word.
Oh no,
overrated now.
No, Vince was saying that he would never get hired back.
Oh, when Vince says that, you know that's not true.
Oh, right, exactly. So
Vince is really saying maybe.
So I can see why you would think he would be overrated. You know, just depending on where you're coming from when you're watching.
Yeah, when I caught him when that era, and it just and there's a lot of comparisons around him, and it just didn't feel like he fit.
And some people just don't do it for other people.
I thought maybe he'd be like a good jobber or Santino or something. You know?
I remember kind of being surprised that they brought Jeff Jarrett in as a heel into WWF because we were so used to him kind of being kind of like a high flying white meat babyface in Memphis and the USWA and all that. So that kind of surprised me, but I thought he did okay as a heel. I mean, obviously the Double J gimmick was like way over the top.
I like it.
No, I did too. I thought it was good. And I mean, he had some great matches with Shawn Michaels for the Intercontinental title and Razor Ramon. And, so, like I said, I guess I can understand why people like more so the later part of his career, like the tag team part, and then definitely the TNA part, because he was always on top of TNA because, like you said, he was the owner of it, part owner of it. So I guess I can understand that. But to me, he was never really overrated. I actually enjoyed seeing Jeff Jarrett as the champion in TNA. I mean, I thought because they had a lot of the no psychology stuff like on the undercard.
Yeah,
But
right.
Jeff would still like have the matches like against like Kurt Angle or Christian or whatever, and still do kind of like the storytelling psychology thing as the main event.
Yeah, good point.
All right, now here's another guy. I'm not sure if Richie is going to be a whole lot familiar with this guy, but maybe. And that is a guy that was like a big name for a long time. Just passed away in the last couple of years, and that is the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
Not overrated. As much as I'd like to, you just can't. The guy sold. I mean, he was credited for being the first pro wrestler that induced like pandemonium in the crowd. You know, where they would just go nuts, and it's true. I think that guy, for a decade, was maybe the number one wrestler in the world. I mean, you'd have to get like an Andre the Giant or, a couple other guys that would be known as much as Dusty Rhodes, be able to draw the money, pack the house. And at the time when he was younger, and when we first started watching him, he was getting a little older, and he was already booking, and a lot of his energy went to that, and he just wasn't as good in the ring,
Yeah.
But man, the early on stuff, that guy was an athlete and a half,
Yeah.
former baseball player,
Yeah.
played football, and it drew a ton of money. So I don't think overrated, even though I would watch him like against like Lex Luger putting himself over everybody. I still can't call him overrated, even though I thought he should have like got out of the business and
At least stepped aside a little bit.
Yeah.
And made some room for like the younger guys at that point.
yeah, right at the point. Other than that,
Yeah.
super stud there. I mean,
Yeah.
Now, Richie, are you real familiar with
Oh,
Dusty's
the
career?
American Dream. Sure.
Or are you just familiar with the polka dots and
I caught
sapphire?
him.
he did a
era?
great job on that too, man.
No,
That
he
was
did. He
awesome.
got that
Yeah,
over,
yeah.
and that was not meant to
I
get
caught
over.
him. I caught him toward. I liked him. I caught him towards the end of the career when he's putting people over and stuff. But I enjoyed his matches and his shtick.
American Dream, Dusty Rhodes coming at you
Come
live
that
in
live in
color.
Yeah, I mean, talk about and here's a saying that you hear all the time, and that's talking the people into the seats.
Yeah,
And Dusty could definitely do that, no matter what. I mean, I can't say that he's overrated, although when I saw him, I don't know if I knew that he was the booker at the time, but yeah, he kind of booked, like Gargano said, Dusty books Dusty.
yeah.
So, like you said, putting himself over Lex Luger and all these other people, these young guys, I didn't like that aspect of it. But yeah, I don't think that I could call Dusty necessarily overrated. But yeah, I guess I just didn't understand it in the beginning. But
Right,
but
right.
knowing his history now, I totally understand it.
Yeah, like his stuff with Tully there, for the TV belt was good.
Yeah.
Oh, that was really good.
Yeah. All right. Let's speed it up a little bit because we're running out of time. And
We got the
I just
2-minute
wanna go
warning
through-
yet?
No, not quite.
We gotta implement that.
but-
Get
but
like the
let's,
George Cannon or like a ring bell.
Yeah.
I'm
How about the Undertaker?
No, not overrated at all. I don't know how he got on that list from the internet, Marks.
He was. I will say this.
I don't know how Dusty Rhodes is on there.
I will say this. He was way down on the list. Undertaker
Yeah.
was way down. Dusty was way down.
I mean, there's like other guys from back. Like I would even talk about John Studd
Yeah,
being overrated.
John Studd is way overrated.
Way
I
overrated.
had him on my top 10 originally.
yeah.
But Undertaker. In ring, I would say overrated. I like his shtick.
I mean, he was kind of a guy that was like, well, he's kind of
just-
become
it's-
all gimmick.
Yeah,
At this
it's,
point.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
all
he's-
it's yeah. I think
had
it's
to.
always been all gimmick. I don't never really
Man, that guy could work though.
a little bit. Yeah, I don't know.
You got to figure he's
Yeah,
working
maybe
within a
little.
character too. He's not going to
Yeah.
do a bunch of planchas and hurricanranas and all that. Being
Yeah.
the dead man.
But his entrance is cool. But I go order pizza, go cook it, come back in time to watch the start of the thing. I wouldn't say he was overrated. I guess I wouldn't say he was really overrated. I guess for me, he walks the line, but I guess he's more just right where he's supposed to be.
So you judging that from being a fan of him or
I
not
think
a
I'm just
fan?
being a fan.
Yeah.
It's just being a wrestling fan.
I mean, I definitely can't say that I was like a huge fan of the gimmick, but I definitely cannot call him overrated at this point in his career either. I mean, he did have some great matches, no doubt about it. How about another guy that I really liked, for the era that he was in wrestling, and that is Mick Foley.
Why is these guys on this list?
Yeah.
They just, I think what they did was they
Just pick
had,
some popular wrestlers and put up there.
Well, no, like
they're overrated.
Like I said, just because they're on the list doesn't necessarily mean they're overrated.
Right.
They just had a list,
Right.
and then you could like
Rank
upvote
it.
it or downvote.
Yeah.
So
It's like, who's your favorite tag team? And they
I
list
mean,
100 of
I mean,
them.
we're not going
You
to
know?
talk about this guy, but because I don't think any of us
No,
would think
not
he was
overrated.
overrated. But Shawn Michaels was on that list
Yeah,
too.
I like
But
him.
I didn't even put
Mick
him on the
Foley
list because
def-
I don't think any of us would
You
say that
can't.
he's overrated.
How is Mick Foley overrated after all the things he went through? The fall.
You could say where he's a
detriment.
detriment, to the business and, about the style or whatnot, but not overrated,
Yeah, I don't think he's overrated.
How about
I could see how somebody might think that, though, depending on which, but no.
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, Mick Foley was just like so entertaining, and I mean,
He had so many characters too.
Yeah, I mean, just to do what he was able to do with his physical, I mean, obviously he was not the prototype for
Nah,
the
average-looking
stereotypical
guy,
wrestler,
just-
especially at that time. But for what he was able to do, he is definitely not overrated.
Yeah.
Now, how about the Big Show?
No, not overrated. I don't think so at all. I remember times where I don't even know what era this was, but we were watching the pay-per-views and it was Big Show. It was around the time where Shawn Michaels had like his neck surgery or something. I think he was trying to come back, but it was Big Show in Victoria. And I just remember like watching the pay-per-views at like Buffalo Wild Wings.
Mhm.
And it was like, man, Big Show like had about the best match on the damn card, him or Victoria.
Well, Victoria probably carried him. She was a great wrestler. She was not overrated.
No, and
No, she's definitely.
I
not
don't think
overrated.
I
She's
don't think he was
underrated.
overrated at all.
Underrated,
Because
definitely.
that's a big frame and a big. I haven't seen any of the stuff he's done in the last 5 years or whatever, but no way, not the Big Show.
I don't think he was overrated. I don't think he was at all. I don't think he's been pretty steady.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't classify him as overrated, but I think the knock on him is the way that he came in. I think their expectations of him were a lot higher than what he became, at least in the WWE's eyes. I think that
They thought he was going to be another Andre the Giant.
I guess, but I mean, they could have, if they would have booked him correctly, he could have been.
Yeah, that's it.
But it's their fault.
Yeah.
I mean, in my eyes, it's their fault. I mean, he shows up from WCW, and he was like one of the first defections when WCW was still winning.
Yeah.
Shows up in that match with Austin in the cage match, and then loses to him the very next day on Raw.
Yeah,
Like, why would you do that?
I know.
That kind of killed him off right there.
Yeah, and then they made him a joke. They tried to make him a big bad monster, and he's
Right.
beating people up, and all of a sudden he's out there dancing like a.
I mean,
like they dance around on
I-
TV now.
I do get that you gotta they gotta branch out to all their audiences.
Sure.
I don't know why they're putting the Big Show down for the kids. That's like you're saying. That's
Yeah,
what they're
yeah,
doing.
good point. Yeah.
It's like they're putting the Big Show down to the kids and just held them back. And you had other guys that they should have put down there. for the
Well, and
kids.
I mean, another thing is they've turned him babyface heel so many times.
Right.
right.
That kills somebody too.
Yeah.
So
He's not an
Yeah,
anti-hero.
it was booking screwed him
He's
up.
one of those people that cannot be an anti-hero. Walk down that line of being an anti-hero.
yeah.
But it didn't really screw him up in the end. But at the beginning,
Yeah,
it's
it
like,
just-
gosh, what are you
yeah.
guys doing? You got the monster there.
Right.
Now here's a guy that was, I don't remember where he was on the list, but he is actually going into the Hall of Fame this year, and that is the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time, the Honky Tonk Man.
Not overrated. He's one of my favorites of all time. So,
I'm gonna say he's
I mean,
overrated.
really?
Yeah, I never cared for him.
Because I
didn't
don't
think
even, because I like a lot of the guys, like if I say, I could see how somebody would think they're overrated or not, one
Yeah.
way or the other. I thought Honky Tonk Man was just way too good to even
Yeah,
be, considered overrated.
I never. Yeah, he's over.
And a lot of
I feel like
people
he's overrated.
think that way because they hate him. He was so good at his job,
That's-
He had
Yeah.
the title too long.
Well, yeah,
We should have for a few less weeks.
That's a part of it, and he didn't do all the flashy moves or anything like that. He did what he had to do. I definitely think that he is not overrated. Just a fantastic heel. I mean, for that era, he was just. But as soon as he lost the title, I mean, you just saw him like drop down the ranks, like big time,
Because he was overrated.
Well, yeah.
Well,
it's like put him back down on the
What can you
card.
do with him? At that point, I mean,
Heavyweight
he had
champion?
that long.
Yeah, and you can only
that
be on
long
top
run.
for that long,
Right.
You got to go back down the card.
How about Batista?
The animal.
Oh, gosh. I mean, it's kind of like a tale of two. I'll say overall, yes, overrated. Because it was kind of a deal like a Goldberg or somebody like that. They were just, it was too fast. Granted, he was in Ohio Valley. They did the Leviathan thing with him when he came out of the water, kind of like the Sullivan gimmick down in Florida,
Right.
Purple Haze. But
Mark Lewin.
I'd say overall overrated because I never felt that he really got good enough to
I feel like
be in that spot,
Yeah.
And
I feel
but
like
he
he was
wasn't
one of those
bad,
needed to be
but-
developed more.
Yeah.
Like he left
Yeah.
as he was developing. That's what I feel. I feel
Yeah,
like he was
really, 'cause it takes
he was
10
starting
years,
to come
you know?
in, and then he left.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he was kind of hit or miss with me. I kind of liked him, and he would have a good match, but then he'd have a crappy match, and it just kind of depended on I guess who he was with. But
Yeah, it took him a while to get comfortable too. All of a sudden,
Yeah.
like after you're there for a while, the angles start working better. The promos are a little better. You're not worried as much about memorizing and whatnot. You're just letting it go.
All right, this will be the last one, and we didn't talk about any females, but another one that's going into the Hall of Fame along with D-Generation X, and that is China.
Overrated. No, not overrated. I mean, because there's only so much you can do within the genre, within the women's wrestling, and especially around that time. No, I mean,
China.
she was.
Man,
they
she
had
was a
they had
beast.
people worse than her, I thought, on the roster.
China. I thought. I'm not gonna say she was overrated. I think she was. Life happens, whatever. She's gone too quick. She left the WWE, got involved with drugs.
So you're saying like before she could really get in and know what she's
I think
doing?
we really could. I think we really missed out. She missed out on her peak.
Yeah.
I don't think she was. Peaked at all, and I think that's
Right.
why a lot of people put her as overrated. Is because we never got to see her peak, and she'd probably hang with a lot of the guys. And the Continental champion.
Yeah, I mean, I
she
was
really couldn't, but I could see what you're saying.
I think they could have.
I was not a huge fan of hers, and I was not a fan of her beating the guys at that point. But I can't really say that she's overrated. So, okay, we're getting to the end now. Richie, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We will look for Comic Speeder Sci-Fi is not going to be on until next season now. Is that
As
what
far
you're
as I
saying?
know, you can check us out on comicspeedersci-fi.com or YouTube, Facebook,
Okay.
all that.
Season,
kind of
when's the
stuff.
season roll around?
We're not sure yet. We haven't.
Oh,
We haven't got the dates.
Okay. Brace, any parting words?
Everybody, thanks for joining. We're not doing it live tonight, so this would be, a tape delay, old school wrestling words. So everybody have a good night. Mad Dog, great job. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you guys. As always, everybody just keep checking the Butch Blood BLUDD Facebook page for updates on our next show, and hopefully we'll see everybody next week. Take care.
You smell what I'm cooking?
Yeah.
Woo! Kiss stealing. Limousine ride.
At 2 a.m. all drunk and full of smoke. My wife said I have had enough. That said I'm sick. Get out. So I stumbled down to Kelly's Pub across the edge of town. And I told the boys my story, and we had another round.